Please don't pay attention to whatever the hell's going on over here. I don't know what's happening. I'm stress breaking out on my face, but I truly, this is not a breakout. It's like, I think I like scratched myself. I don't know what happened. Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I like to post about books and music, mostly Taylor Swift. But today I just wanted to give you guys some books you can read in a day. They're also kind of like books that I've considered as books that can get you back into reading. These are all books that have gotten me out of a slump. So because of that, I think these are definitely books that can get you more interested in reading again. I remember in like late high school, early college, when I was trying to get back into reading, the main problem was my attention span. Like, these types of books were a lot easier to get through, and it wasn't this like fear of committing to something that would take a super long time. Now I'm up to reading pretty much anywhere between 50 and 100 books a year consistently for the last like 3 or 4 years. So now I'm going to be attempting monsters like this. This is still really daunting because this is like a real adult book, whereas books this long I've only ever read in my life were of like this genre, for example, or like Harry Potter. So I think there's definitely an art to like building yourself up to longer books. So today I am going to be chatting through 10-ish books that you can read in a day. Some of them you can read in one day, even if you have like other commitments going on or if you're working or whatever. But some of these are definitely for a day when like all you're doing is reading like on a weekend or something, unless you want to read it in like 2 days. So I just read the Summer I Turned Pretty series this past summer, and I was in a slump when I read these, and these completely pulled me out of the slump. Like, I finished all of them within a week. I have a reading vlog up of me reading these for the first time. For the most part, the first one is the best, so I think the series is easy to get into because it's not something you have to like get through to get to the good parts. It's like amazing right off the bat. It's incredibly atmospheric. It's set in kind of like a Cape Cod type of area. It's a summer beach romance, and it's YA, but definitely geared at like the younger side of YA. So I do also think books that are aimed at a slightly younger audience also help you get out of a slump or get back into reading, or it also makes the book a little faster to read. This one is under 300 pages. However, the font, like, it really doesn't take that long to get through these pages. I read this in 2 days because I was working. I started it like in the middle of the week, but I easily could have finished this in 1 day over the weekend, so I think that counts. And then these other two are okay. I mean, if you want to continue the series, go ahead. They are also fast and easy to get through. It's just the characters get a little weird, particularly in the third one. Like, the second one's still okay, but like the first one is just so much childhood nostalgia, beach atmosphere, so fun. I also recommend the TV series, but this is for people getting back into reading, not watching TV. The next one may sound a little bit random. So it's called Slipping on the Ice, a collection of stories from a Peace Corps Ukraine volunteer. So I ordered this one off of Amazon when the war started. My family's from Ukraine, so I just wanted to read something like this. The thing is, this book is so funny and easy to get through, and I think it's his debut novel, but it's pretty much a memoir. It's like written entirely from his own experience, and it's from the perspective of a very, very culture shocked American being in Eastern Europe for the first time in his life. It was just a lot of fun, and it really explains a lot about Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian people. So if you take any interest to Ukrainian culture, with Ukraine being in the news so often lately for unfortunate reasons, I highly recommend this book. It's short, you can get through it in a day, and it's super funny and very underrated. Like, no one ever talks about this. It's, I believe, indie published, but yeah, you can get it on Amazon, and I just will never stop recommending this book. It's so funny. I've talked about it a little bit on my TikTok and shared like little anecdotes that I thought were the funniest from the book. Next is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. So I actually have not read this book since I was in 8th grade, but that was around the time when I was like trying to get my attention span to get back to the way it was before, when I was in elementary school and I was reading like the entire Twilight series in 1 week, for example. This one is just over 200 pages, and I guess depending on the edition that you have, it may be less even. Again, it's a very small book. Like, you know, this is my hand. I mean, I'm like 6 feet tall, so take this with a grain of salt. But it's small, it's short, it's told in a diary entry style. So I think that makes it feels like you're reading someone's diary. It feels kind of juicy, so it like entices you to keep going. It's basically a very coming of age type of novel. I still remember so much of this book to this day. That may or may not be because I've watched the movie a couple of times, even though I've only read the book once. But it deals with mental health really well. Definitely trigger warning. There are mentions of SA, sewer slide, depression, all those things. But yeah, that's easy to get through. It's a boy who just started high school. He's in his freshman year and he is just navigating life and relationships and making friends. It's kind of like what 13 Reasons Why wanted to be. I literally say that as I have a copy like right here. But yeah, this book still holds up. It's set in the 90s. It was written in 1999 and it still is just very relevant and it's not outdated in any way. So highly recommend The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Okay, next is called The Bad Seed. Wow, this book freaking blew my mind. This is a classic basically, but it is quite short. It was also turned into a movie. The movie's in black and white. That's how old it is. Basically, it's about a female serial killer, except she's like 10 or maybe even less than 10 years old. There's this child and it really ponders the question, I think for the first time, especially in the horror genre, that not only like can women also be capable of these acts of violence, but can like young women, like children, be capable. So typically we think of it as just men. I mean, statistics do back this up. I mean, I think people are a lot more knowledgeable nowadays that anybody can do horrible things, but this one is just absolutely crazy. It's such a mindfuck. I only picked up this book because I saw it featured in Pretty Little Liars like what, 10 years ago, and I'd always wanted to read it and I finally got around to it and I was not disappointed. I really wish this was required reading at my high school. I thought it was very interesting. It's basically a classic thriller about a child serial killer. Like, how much more interesting can that get? And it's like 200 pages. Next is A Jury of Her Peers. So I had to read this in college. I can't remember if it was my gender studies class or if it was just an English class. I have such a terrible memory and this was literally just like 2-ish years ago. This might even be classified as a short story. It's basically kind of like a very classic piece of feminist literature. It's really easy to read though. Like, the language is easy to get through. It's basically these two women and they have these husbands that are trying to solve this murder of this man, and they are just not really getting anywhere with what actually happened and why. But then their wives end up stumbling upon this crime scene and they start to put pieces together, and it's very much like this is the kind of world we would be living in if women were not allowed to work, if the female perspective was not included in things like this. And definitely what keeps you turning the pages, even though it also is very short, is the fact that you just want to know what happened. And as these women are slowly uncovering things, it's just very easy to read because it's so plot driven. It also kind of shows women needing to stick together. This is probably my favorite piece of like feminist literature that I had to read in any of my college classes. I just really found this one fascinating, and it definitely gives you some historical background on the ways women used to be treated. But for the most part, this was just very entertaining. Like, it teaches you something and it also keeps you engrossed in the story. Next, I have Assassin. So this was a reread from earlier this year. This was a favorite book of mine ever since middle school, I believe, and I came back to it earlier this year. It's historical fiction, which I really love. It's basically from the perspective of this girl who is working at the White House as an assistant for the seamstress, I believe, and it kind of details Abraham Lincoln's assassination. She meets the president a few times and she actually becomes friends with some of his kids. She's really into theater, really into acting, so she also encounters John Wilkes Booth. This character is completely fictional, but the events did happen, and it's definitely a blend of fact with fiction. Something about this just still really holds up. I rated this 5 stars, even though it's not something that makes me cry or makes me like think too hard. Something about it is just so riveting. Like, the chapters are short, so it's really easy to just keep turning the pages. Like I said about the last one, this one is literally less than 200 pages. Okay, it's so fun and easy to get through. I think I read it in 2 days, again because I was working, but you could easily read it in 1. A lot of really interesting characters and how manipulative John Wilkes Booth was. I don't know how completely historically accurate that is, but like in this book, him as a character. And this poor girl, I swear to God, I think she's like 15 in the book or something, but she's such a fascinating character. There's a childhood friends to lovers type of romance, and it's very cute because they're having to like write letters to each other. There's something about that that just makes the hopeless romantic in me lose my mind. I think that's so cute when we have just like this instant communication today. The book includes their letters back and forth because he goes off to boarding school in a different state, so yeah, they only get to talk like once every few weeks, I believe, as their letters get sent back and forth. And yeah, this was a late childhood fave that ended up really holding up, so I do recommend it. Okay, next I would recommend If I Stay by Gail Forman. This book was really popular around 10 years ago because the movie came out around that time. Basically, there's this girl, Mia, she's 17 years old, and her family end up getting in a car accident, and she's the only one who survives, but she's in a coma. So the entire title of the book, If I Stay, is like her deciding whether or not she actually wants to stay alive. There's a really interesting character background because she is a violinist. She wants to attend Juilliard, and she has a boyfriend who's like a rock star guitarist. So they come from very different genres of music, but they each have this love that they share for it. So very different types of people, but also they have this thing in common. So that one to me was a 3-star book, but I need to segue into the sequel, which is a little bit longer. But first of all, it's like this kind of font again. Everything's really like double spaced, and these pages don't take long to read. I love the sequel so much because it's after Mia makes her decision whether she wants to stay or not. And this one's definitely like a second chance romance type of work. There's a reunion in this. I don't want to give too much away because I feel like you kind of have to read the first one, and I don't want to spoil the first one, obviously. But second chance romance, again, it's the same kind of couple that are very different but also share this love of music at the same time. And I actually rated the first one 3 stars and the sequel 5, which is pretty rare. Like usually the sequel is not as good as the original, but in this case, hold out for that sequel, man. But I don't know, I still feel comfortable recommending the first one along with the second one because so many people absolutely love the first one. Like it has a lot of 5-star ratings. So odds are you might even like the first one better. Next is The Giver. So fun fact, Taylor Swift was actually in this movie also, I think in 2014 or 2015. She was like 25 years old and playing a 12-year-old, so that was really, really weird. But she actually did a pretty good job. She had this look on her face that was very like naive and young, and I to this day believe that was her best acting role. Now don't get me wrong, a lot of her acting roles are pretty rough. She is a songwriter, she is a singer, but this one was just not that bad. And she also played like a musician, so it kind of made sense. Basically, this is kind of like, if you like The Hunger Games, you might like this book. It's dystopian. The main character, Jonas, lives in this community that basically experiences no suffering, no pain, pretty much no human emotion, but also there's the flip side of that where like, yeah, there is no suffering, but also there is no moments of extreme happiness. When you have no downs, there are no ups, and everyone is kind of like equal and the same. So once a character turns 12 years old, they are given their life assignment, so kind of like what their career will be. They don't really get a say in it. And Jonas is chosen for something special, basically to become the giver. He basically has to be like the keeper of feelings, like the feelings that nobody else in the community is able to experience. So he's in charge of all of those. It's very interesting. It's also a series, but I wanted to start off just recommending the first book because I think there's like 4. It's around 230 pages, and again, we have this like kind of font where it's just very fast to read. This was a 5-star book, and it really kept me thinking, and I actually rated all 4 of the books 5 stars, every single one. How often does that happen, you know? Oh, also my copy includes an exclusive Q&A with Taylor Swift. I didn't even know that. I haven't read this since 2014-ish, so. Actually, Taylor Swift's interview in this is really good. I recommend this edition in particular because of that. Okay, next I would like to recommend The Outsiders. I would say a lot of you might have had this as required reading in high school, but maybe that's only like in my state because this is set in my hometown. So this was one of the first true young adult books. This is a book that was written in 1967, and we have to keep in mind that young adult is a very, very new genre. Like, the entire concept of a teenager is a very new thing. Like, people always thought like, oh, you are a child and then you become an adult. And there really is a huge period of adolescence in between, and this was around the time when things finally started being marketed to people in that awkward age. And the fun thing is, this is actually written by a girl who was, I think, 16 at the time or something, and she was basically writing about the kind of cliques she saw around her. It's all about like the greasers versus the socias, which is short for social, so it's kind of like the rugged motorcycle-y greaser type of kid, and then you have basically like the rich kids. I think this book is getting banned everywhere because I'm not really completely sure why. Somebody dies in it, but it's really not that traumatic or crazy. Like, I had to read this when I was 14. It's just a really good book. I remember kids making this their entire fucking personality, like whether they were a greaser or a soc, which is so ridiculous because it's like, guys, it's 2013. Like, what are you doing? But I think this book really stays with a lot of people to this day, especially in my hometown. The movie was filmed in several places in my hometown, which is weird. Yeah, it is following the perspective of the youngest of the group, and he is a greaser. So he's 14 and all his friends are like 16 to 18-ish. So, you know, very coming of age. Kind of makes me think of The Perks of Being a Wallflower a little bit. It's very interesting how this genre just grew so much in just a few decades and how much inspiration a lot of books took from the original ones, like The Outsiders. So yeah, I think it just gives a very good introduction to how YA started. And now we have just such a beautiful, amazing, strong category of young adult that I think I will be reading until the day I die, if I'm being honest with you. Okay, my recommendations have been a little bit all over the place, but these are all just really fun, like, you know, whatever kind of interest strikes your fancy. Is that a phrase? I wanted this to be kind of diverse for like many different kinds of readers. So I would like to recommend another kind of YA book, but it's definitely geared towards a younger audience. I would say probably even slightly younger than Summer I Turned Pretty kind of audience, honestly. So this is the Olivia Kidney series. This series is so fucking underrated. I remembered reading it in elementary school, and it's very much like chapter books. It's not like pictures or anything like a children's book. I think it definitely is like a younger YA type of audience, and I just cannot believe that something like this is just like not on people's radar when things like Harry Potter are so popular, because this is like fantasy pretty much. There are talking lizards, haunted subway tunnels, there are ghosts. Like, so many things about this series are just so fun and like fantasy, and I feel like if you like Harry Potter, you would like this series. Another thing, I rated all 3 of the books in this series 5 stars consistently. It's basically about this girl who has to move around a lot because her father cannot hold a job. It's kind of funny, it's kind of humorous. In the very first book, the main character Olivia moves into an apartment that's like crazy. She goes and visits some of the neighbors. One of them has an apartment that's entirely made of glass. One of them has talking lizards. Another one has a fucking rainforest in their apartment. And she ends up making a friend, I think, in the building. And there's also a lot of really sad aspects to this series because there's a lot of death in this book, and how someone as young as Olivia, I think she's like 11, how a kid deals with that and copes with that kind of trauma. It's very plot driven. I remember just reading this, it felt like a drug trip, but it also made perfect sense. It's very much like the brain of a child, and it's just so fun and riveting. The haunted subway tunnels don't come around until the 3rd book, but yeah, there are ghosts, a lot of really fun aspects to this series. I feel like I'm explaining this so poorly, but that's because there are 3 books and I want you to read all of them. They are less than 200 pages each. I read these while I was traveling when I reread them last year on my way to Ukraine, and they're super fun and escapist. So those are all of my book recommendations for books you can read in a day. I would love to hear down in the comments what is the last book that you read in 24 hours or less. Anytime I think of a book that you can read in 24 hours or less, I always think of The Fault in Our Stars. Even though technically it's like pretty long, I literally spent all day reading it and like was freaking mind blown by the end. It's also not something I would recommend reading in just one day because I was just like fucking sobbing by the end of it, and it hit me so fast and hard and unexpectedly because I had no idea what was coming. I was only 15, I think, so just not aware of what I was getting myself into. But yeah, I think those are some of the best books that you're able to just consume that quickly and you feel like you got whiplash. So I would love to hear what you guys would recommend to people. I hope you enjoyed all of these suggestions. Please leave me any requests down in the comments. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here, and if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. I will see you all next week for my Midnight's Taylor Swift album reaction. I'm so excited. My friend made bingo cards and I put up a little community tab post so you guys can download those, so go find that after this video. But yeah, it's gonna be such a fun, exciting time. I can't wait to play bingo in my reaction. Oh my god, it's gonna kill me. Okay, I'm gonna shut up about that. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and yeah, fucking Midnight's is here. Midnight's is basically here. Happy Midnight's era, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye guys.